Duke fans, I think you can agree with me. Just gut-wrenching, heartbreaking. What a tough blow once again as Duke falls to Kansas by 3 in Las Vegas.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. I'm glad to have you here with us on Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils, your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. And throughout today's show, we're going to be recapping the Duke basketball loss to the Kansas Jayhawks by a score of 75-72 in Las Vegas. A heartbreaking defeat for the Blue Devils, who really were having to play from behind and play catch up the entire game in this one and ultimately fall 3 points short. Two freshmen make turnovers down the stretch. Cooper Flagg once again, and then Connelly with the ball in his hands, a costly turnover at the end of it, and then missed a three-point shot at the end that would have won it. We'll break it all down with our good friend Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham here on today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. You're able to watch the show each and every day on YouTube as well. Like this video, share it with your friends. Again, we're so appreciative of your support here on Locked On Blue Devils. The final score, 75-72. A tough start to this game for Duke. Found themselves trailing by double digits at a couple of different parts throughout the game, and ultimately too little too late in their comeback attempt to knock off the Kansas Jayhawks. It's Duke's second loss of the season as Kevin joins us now. Thinking about this one, there's so many different places to start and why this game kind of went wrong for Duke basketball. But I think right out of the gates, there was a lot of it was pretty obvious that Kansas was a bit more physical and really went at Duke's toughness in a game like this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, JJ. And tough that we have to recap another loss here, coming off the Kentucky one a couple of weeks ago too. But I think it is tough. I think in the beginning, you play two high-level games already, and you think you're going to be ready for the intensity and the physicality that's going to come. And I didn't really see that from this Duke team. It kind of looked like men versus boys out there in the early going, and that kind of continued on for about 10 minutes before Duke really found their footing and then made a little bit of a push there at the end of the first half, and then the buzzer beater from Tyrese Proctor got them to back within 2, and then you kind of saw the same thing start to happen in the second half. Duke comes out, takes a lead, their first lead since it was 3-2, and then I think it was a 9-0 or 7-0 Kansas run, and then obviously some of the other things unfold that we'll get into a little bit later on. Duke battles back, and Hunter Dickinson gets ejected, and then kind of a whole nother life of the game takes on after that. So disappointing for this Duke team. I think a lot of people expected a little bit better, even with Dickinson on the floor, and certainly when he left.
Well, similar to our Kentucky conversation, again, I hate that we're having to do this. One, the final scores were so close and nearly identical to one another. Duke falls to Kentucky 77-72 against Kansas. They're 2 points better, but it's still a loss at the end of the day. Instead of a 5-point loss, it's a 3-point loss. Same amount of points for Duke. They score 72. They give up 75 to Kansas. And then as we talk about the plays down the stretch there, it's a turnover within the last minute for Cooper Flagg, and then we see one more coming there from Connelly. Some of these opportunities are coming out of timeouts or stoppages in play in which Duke's able to draw up some plays. This was the first chance we saw Connelly have the ball in his hands late in a game with an opportunity to make a game-winning play, and just didn't quite go his way. Tough shooting night from 3 for Con, who finishes 0 of 8 from there. Did a lot of nice things, sharing the basketball and that sort of thing. But let's start there, Kevin, with those last possessions that Duke had.
Well, yeah, I'm even going to go back to there was a minute 38 left, and Kansas had just taken a 73-71 lead, and Cooper Flagg had the ball, and he gets fouled, and he goes to the free throw line. He misses the first one, makes the second one. So instead of a tie game, you have a 1-point deficit. And then a little bit interesting around there, around that point, Kamen Malawach came out. And I thought with Hunter Dickinson out of the game, and first let me say Malik Brown did an incredible job on Hunter Dickinson when he was out there. And obviously,
so amazing. Yeah.
And then Hunter Dickinson, I think, was probably even a little frustrated with how good Malik Brown was. And that's why he got that kick in the head, which was deemed intentional, and the flagrant 2, and ejected him. So he did a great job. But Kamen Malawach really, I thought, controlled the game in the minutes he was out there and Dickinson wasn't. So I was a little surprised that John Shire took Malawach out and put Brown back in with around 2 minutes to go. And that's where you kind of saw Kansas get a couple of offensive rebounds and keep possessions alive. I have the play-by-play right up here. So right after Cooper Flagg went 1 of 2 from the free throw line, KJ Adams misses a shot, and then Kansas gets an offensive rebound, and then Adams misses again, and then Duke finally does control the defensive rebound, and then that's when you kind of got that first turnover from Cooper Flagg, which was so eerily similar to the first turnover he had late in the game against Kentucky, where he goes ISO, he backs his way into the post, he goes to control and spin back towards the baseline, and he loses control of the ball when Kansas collapses the defense. So that was kind of deja vu for Duke fans. But then even after that, another missed shot. Malawach was back. I don't think he was back in at this point, but then Kansas misses a shot. They had the ball tipped out of bounds. It was originally ruled Kansas ball. They reviewed it, went back to Duke. And then you have another moment. There's about 14 seconds left.
Yep.
They do end up putting the ball in Knippel's hands eventually. It goes to Tyrese Proctor. He gives it up, and then Knippel, he gets into the lane, and he goes up, and he once he's halfway up in the air, he realizes he doesn't have a shot. He has nobody to pass it to, because even if you look at Cooper Flagg, who appeared to be open on the wing, defender was right in the way. I think the biggest thing was Sion James, who was probably supposed to stay in the corner, crashed in, because once he saw Knippel go up, he knew he wasn't getting the ball and tried to crash the offensive pass.
Rebound, yeah.
And then that dragged another defender into it just put more people in the lane, and that ends up being a turnover. And then obviously that last play where Knippel almost had the 3-pointer to go. I know I'm trying to just go on a stream of consciousness right here, but I love the play getting it to half court, because you have the timeout. Kansas called it off the made free throws. You get it to half court, 2.9 seconds. You still got a chance to set up a play. I don't think it was a great play design by John Shire. Give Kansas credit. They defended it well. But when you try to make an innovative play design like this with 4 players in the backcourt and then sprinting up to try to get in, I'm assuming the play design is to get a little bit of a better shot than a contested 3-pointer from almost half court.
Right. You would think a screen has to be involved somewhere, and I don't know if Kansas defended it so well there was a missed opportunity to set one of those. But, yeah, credit to Con, man. He had such a poor night shooting from 3, but almost banked it in with the look he was kind of able to put off there. At least there was a shot. It's always so frustrating to me, Kevin, when you don't get those shots, when it's a turnover instead, because I'm always just like, throw it up there. Maybe there's a chance that something like this is going to go in.
Yeah, and you look at it, the 2 previous possessions, they didn't have a shot. With the Cooper Flagg turnover and then the Knippel turnover. So those were 2 plays right there where you had a chance to take a lead and you didn't get a shot off twice. And that's very similar to the Kentucky game where you didn't get a shot. And something I want to dive into a little bit more, because look at that Arizona game, and yes, there were clutch moments through the second half. But when you look at kind of those final 4 to 5 minutes, it's a 10-point game. There wasn't that much game pressure on Duke to come up where you come out of a timeout and you desperately need a basket to either extend your lead to 2 possessions or tie or take the lead. And when we've seen that this season, granted it is still only 3 weeks, Duke's come up empty every single time against Kentucky and now against Kansas.
We can go ahead and bury the lead for people out there. The Blue Devils only play 8 players in the game tonight against the Jayhawks. Once again, the rotation is not extended. Duke's got a game coming up on Friday against Seattle back inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. And then they'll be playing a top 5, top 10 team in the country in the Auburn Tigers come next week inside Cameron Indoor. So plenty of opportunity to get this thing back right. We'll see if that rotation expands at all. Let's take a look at the box score, dive a little bit deeper into the Duke side of things with this loss to Kansas after we take our first break here on today's show. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the absolute best this time of year. With Thanksgiving coming tomorrow, there's no better place to get in on the NFL action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, 3 games coming up tomorrow to enjoy over the Thanksgiving holiday in the NFL. There's a Black Friday game set to be played between the Chiefs and the Raiders, and then a whole bunch of action on Sunday. You could see all of that over at FanDuel. Again, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Final in this one, Duke loses by a score of 75-72 as they take the loss against the Kansas Jayhawks. And for Duke on the day, it was Cooper Flagg, who's led the way all season long for the team, who finishes with just 13 points in this one, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 turnovers, including a costly one there at the end. So much like all Duke basketball discussions, Kevin, we start with the Cooper Flagg side of things. And took a little bit, really felt like once Hunter Dickinson was ejected, that's when Cooper Flagg really started to take over a little bit. Early on, I just don't feel like he was being that assertive when the ball would find his hands.
No, he wasn't, but Kansas defended him well. They had a game plan. They were kind of double teaming him even when he didn't have the basketball. Bill Self kind of came out with the game plan that they're going to make everybody else kind of beat them. And the way Kansas shot the ball so efficiently in that first 10 minutes, it was almost like it was an avalanche, and Duke finally was able to stop it. But I think Kansas really defended him well. He got a little bit into a flow early in the second half, and then obviously with a 7-footer coming out of the game, he was able to find a couple more shots near the rim. But then you look at those 4 turnovers and obviously the big costly one late. For your YouTube viewers right now, I have a lot of issues with this box score right now, and I guess we'll start from the top bottom. I think it's time to say Duke might have a Caleb Foster problem because in the 3 big games they played this season, he's really not been good. And, it's tough to remember the last time he was even on the floor out there tonight. He only plays 15 minutes, 2 of
only
4.
Only 6 minutes in the second half.
Yeah, and he had the worst plus-minus out of anybody on the floor and -13. And even you look at Arizona, only 26 minutes, 2 of 6 from the floor. And against Kentucky, he played 29 minutes and he was 2 of 10. So, this is a player that a lot of was expected of this season and coming back for a sophomore season. And not to discredit the 3 other games against Maine, Army, and Wofford, but when you come to Duke, I think the expectation is you're going to play well in these big games. People don't really care that much if you're scoring anywhere between 10 to 17 points against these mid-major teams. They want to see you play well in the big game. So I'm starting to get very concerned about Caleb Foster. Cooper Flagg, only 9 shot attempts. I think you understand it because as we kind of just highlighted how well Kansas defended him in the first 10 minutes and double teaming him and how he was able to get going a little bit more once Hunter Dickinson got ejected. So you're able to kind of see that. But I think the biggest thing I have an issue with right now in the box score is Tyrese Proctor only getting 7 shot attempts. And I had the same complaints in the second half of the Kentucky game where it kind of felt like he disappeared. And even to an extent tonight, he's 5 of 7 of 3. Why is he not shooting the basketball more?
Yeah.
Why is he not involved in those last couple of plays? I'm really confused by that. And especially when you couple it with Con Knippel going 4 of 14 and 0 of 8 from 3-point range. Why didn't Tyrese Proctor get some more of those shots? Those are the 3 things I'm really confused about, especially the Tyrese Proctor stuff. I just don't know why he's not more of a focal point in this offense.
Yeah, really slow start offensively for Duke. And I'm thinking back through the game, looking at these numbers here and trying to piece it all together, as I'm sure all Duke fans are in hours. And look, it's unfortunately, we're going to have to enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday knowing the last time we watched Duke basketball, it was the defeat. But 66 possessions in this game for Duke, 48 shot attempts, a season high 16 turnovers in this one. But you look at the numbers, Duke shot 50% from the floor. Even when Con Knippel went 0 of 8 from 3, the Blue Devils were still 11 of 26 from 3-point range. That's also a Mason Gillis 1 for 5 in there as well. That was inefficient. They still, as a team, shot 42% from 3-point range. Were really effective shooting it, just sloppy, turned it over. And then there were just certain times where they couldn't get into a good set and kind of had the bad shots were forced ones, or the missed ones, I should say.
Yeah, they really were. And I think you start to worry a little bit about Con Knippel because if you look at some of his numbers away from Cameron. Now, yes, he was 3 of 6 against Arizona, but now 0 of 8 against Kansas and 1 of 8 against Kentucky. And those are teams that have obviously more experienced guys in their backcourt, and they're bigger and they're stronger and they're more athletic. So is that a negative on Con? I mean, can he handle playing in games like this against other teams that have
Kevin? I don't want to think about
bigger and more athletic guys than him?
I don't want to think about a neutral site problem for Con Knippel, knowing that if we want to win a national championship, we're going to have to play on a neutral floor, right? But you're right. I mean, 1 of 16 in neutral sites from 3-point range this season for Con right now.
Not even neutral floors, because these 3 big games have been played away from Cameron, because he did go 3 of 6 against Arizona. But it's guys who are more athletic than him. I mean, KJ Adams wasn't on him a lot, but you look at guys like AJ Storr, and you can go up and down the backcourt of Kansas. I mean, they have really good guards, and DeJuan Harris isn't the biggest guy around, but a lot of the other ones are fast and quick and big and athletic, and that might be giving Con a real problem right now, although there were a handful of those 3-pointers where he was wide open and he just didn't hit them, and he has to make those shots if he wants to be the prolific shooter that a lot of people have expected him to be over this first 3 weeks of the year.
Big fan of what we saw out of Malik Brown, Sion James. I really like the Mason Gillis minutes and this one as well for this Duke basketball team as the Blue Devils fall 75-72. It's their second loss of the year, and they'll look to bounce back against Seattle a little bit later in the week. Let's talk a little bit more about Malik Brown. There was an ejection in this one. There's still a lot to discuss when Locked On Blue Devils continues here in just a moment. Thank you again for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and first watch here on today's show. What you should also do is check out the Locked On ACC podcast for your second listen and second watch here today. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever it is that you get your podcast. Go check it out after this one. And again, please subscribe to our Locked On Blue Devils YouTube feed and check us out on X at LO_Blue Devils as we continue to break down the recent loss that Duke suffered at the hands of Kansas. We'll take a look at the box score once again. This time we'll bring the Jayhawks into the equation as well with some of their offensive numbers in a game like this. I look at the rebounding battle, Kevin, and Duke falls 6 rebounds short in this one, 31-25. Some of the size that Kansas was able to throw Duke's way, despite being the tallest team in America, Duke at times wasn't able to end possessions with those rebounds. And you mentioned in the last couple of minutes there, that was a big part too.
Objection. I think that was a big problem when you look at the rebounding numbers, because Hunter Dickinson only played 24 minutes and he only grabbed 6 rebounds. And kind of when you look at Kansas, it was everybody who was rebounding, because nobody's credited with double-digit rebounds. I think Floyd Bedinga, I mean, obviously, remember talking about him during his recruitment and was he going to be a Duke Blue Devil or not, and he ends up going to Kansas. He played some big minutes down the end of this game, and I think KJ Adams, he made his first 4 field goal attempts, had a couple of misses late that you thought were going to help Duke. But, I mean, he was big, and he's kind of that Swiss Army knife where he can guard guards, he can guard wings, he can guard bigs, and he can rebound as well, although he only was credited with 2 tonight. So, but he was a problem. You know, it really leaves the bad taste in your mouth, because it felt like this was a game Duke should not have lost, especially with Hunter Dickinson going out. Although with him out, Kansas does get a little bit more athletic, and they can run up and down the court, and they could play with teams who want to push the pace. When Dickinson's in there, he's not a player. He's not that fast. I mean, 7-footers aren't naturally gifted with speed, so they have to play a little bit more slow and in a half-court setting to get him involved in the offense. So I'm not going to say it benefited Kansas by any stretch of the imagination by getting him out of the game, but it's a different style that they've shown they can play. And now you have to imagine he doesn't get in foul trouble very often. But if he ever does, or if he's ever injured, Kansas is going to have confidence that they can win a game without him, because really they did in the last 10 minutes against Duke.
Yeah, it's a really good Duke basketball team. Still really high on what this team can do throughout the rest of this season. Hopefully they're able to pick up a big non-conference win next week against Auburn. Take care of business against Seattle on Friday. I'm not trying to look over the Seattle squad, but I know that Auburn game is going to be a big one that people have their eyes on. And then as we jump into ACC play, hoping to see some good basketball played by this Duke squad in particular. Hunter Dickinson ejected with 10 minutes to go. It was a 2-point Kansas lead. And it was very evident with Malik Brown being who he is, knocks down his first 3-pointer of the season in a Duke uniform, scores 8 points when he's averaging just 2 points a game. I mean, he was so active in this game, Kevin. I think that Hunter Dickinson got away with a hook and hold earlier in the game that John Shire was very upset about. And it kind of just felt like he might have snapped a split second there, and was just frustrated that he's ending up on the floor once again with Malik Brown.
Yeah, I if you watch a lot of Kansas games, it's not often that Hunter Dickinson gets in foul trouble, and they even talked about on the broadcast. He does have a reputation for being a little bit of a dirty player, and I think Fran Fraschilla was the one who brought it up on the broadcast and said that might have factored in here to the case. And he also made up a really good point, and you have to I think a lot of people at home realized this watching the game. Once they ejected Hunter Dickinson, you knew that like the next several whistles were all going to go against Duke. And They did. And Malik Brown, I don't want to say he didn't realize it, but at least he was the one that kept getting called for all those fouls and then had to go to the bench with 4 and put Kansas at the free throw line. And Kansas went 11-12 from the free throw line in this game, and Duke went 13 of 18. And not to say free throws were what decided it, but when you're in a game this close that's decided between 3 points, that's a big
easy
reason.
to point to those. Yeah, absolutely.
It's very easy to point to that. And that doesn't even include like a terrible shooting night from the outside from a player like Connelly.
All right, Sion James, 10 points, another veteran player for this Duke team who early on in the game when Duke couldn't find shots and just was kind of not in rhythm, I thought he came in and kind of changed the pace of the game and did a lot of nice defensive things as well as on the offensive end of the floor. He knocks down both of his 3-point attempts at times when Duke just needed to see a ball go through the bucket, and he finishes with 10 points on the game, 20 minutes. So he played even more than Caleb Foster. And now, I mean, you just look at things like this and you got to wonder, is there a change to what you mentioned a little bit earlier, Kevin? Could there possibly be a change to the lineup here? It's weird that that's kind of the question that we're talking about, just 5 or 6 games into the season and not so much, hey, can this rotation expand just a little bit? But I think it's been pretty clear that, look, we might need to kind of hold off on that conversation because in these big spots, the rotation hasn't changed. I mean, it's 8 guys.
Yeah, the rotation hasn't changed, and I don't know how you can foresee it changing. Now, will Isaiah Evans and Pat Ngaba and Darren Harris play against Seattle on Friday? Yeah, but I think the perspective of most Duke fans, who cares? Like, sure, it'll be great to see them play against Seattle in a game that Duke should win by 20-plus points, but that's not the case. We don't know. I mean, obviously the coaching staff, you would assume, knows a lot more than the fans, but at least from the fan perspective, you don't know if they can play against teams like Kansas and Arizona and Kentucky because they haven't been on the court to prove it. So yeah, I think the rotation is 8 guys. And back to your point on Sion James, I think there is potential for him to crack this starting lineup because especially in the opening 10 minutes of this game, when he was out there, he brought a presence that Duke didn't have. He brought a veteran presence. He brought a presence of toughness. And I'm not backing down to these guys. And you hit a couple of shots, and felt like everyone else was able to breathe a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I can see him being in the starting lineup, if not against Seattle on Friday, against Auburn next week.
Taking a look at this Duke team now with a 4-2 record on the season, taking on Seattle on Friday, and then an opportunity to take on Auburn in the ACC SEC Challenge. I think it's going to be a lot of tough film sessions for this Duke team. Again, came into the game number 1 in KenPom and defensive efficiency. And I will say, when you look at the box score here and you see a Kansas team that shot 49% from the floor, 47% from three-point range, only missed the 1 free throw, they did turn the basketball over 16 times as well. I thought that, as crazy as this might be, there were stretches where Duke actually was really sound defensively and kind of kept them in this game when in some regards, Kansas, being the number 1 team in the land, could have easily kind of ran away.
No, I definitely agree with that. And not to say the shooting numbers are inflated for Kansas, because they're not. They went out there and made whatever it was, 80-90% of their shots to open up the game in the first 7 minutes. But I do think the Duke defense was able to settle in and force some missed shots. And those misses fueled the run in the first half. And even in the second half, when Kansas went on that run after Duke took the lead, they were able to fuel them to get back in this game. So was the defense good overall? No, but there were some stretches that allowed Duke to come back in this game.
All right, we're certainly hopeful that Duke's able to bounce back on Friday and then able to clean things up against Auburn before we get into ACC play and a couple of more non-conference games. Kevin, I hope that our future conversations are more happy and talking about more wins down the line. Before you go, though, tell folks about Ball Durham.
Yeah, over at Ball Durham, we got an all reaction you could want on this Duke basketball loss, kind of detailing a lot of the conversation we just had here tonight. So you could read that over at balldurham.com, and then you could follow us on social media at ball_Durham.
Thanks for the time, Kevin. We'll do it again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to do it for our show here today. A little programming note, we will not have a show for you tomorrow on Thanksgiving. I certainly hope that everyone gets the opportunity to enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday with their friends and family. We will see Duke back in action on Friday night against Seattle. Don't forget the final regular season football game is on Saturday against Wake Forest as the Blue Devils go for win number 9. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again soon. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.